Hello, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Steven Hodgson, and I'm the Head of Publishing at AMEB. I am very happy to be here today to launch the newly revised AMEB Horn syllabus and Series 2 publications, along with the Principal Consultant for the project, Ysolt Clark. During this online launch, Ysolt and I will talk a little bit about the syllabus review, what has changed and what new publications are being released to support the syllabus. The technical work and orchestral excerpts book, the grade books, recorded accompaniments, and the sight reading book. We'll then have the privilege of hearing some wonderful excerpts from the new AMEB Series 2 grade books. And then finally, if we have time at the end, we will be able to field any questions that might come through. There's a little chat button at the bottom of your Zoom box that you'll be able to use, so feel free to ask questions through the chat box throughout the webinar. As many of you know, the previous Horn syllabus and publications were released in 2004. So it's been a little time, and we're very excited to bring you this new syllabus and set of publications. The result of a staggering amount of careful and thoughtful work from Ysolt, of course, but also from a panel of specialist horn teachers responsible for reviewing every proposal made with regards to the technical work, repertoire, and sight reading. I'd like to start by thanking each member of the Horn syllabus and publications team for their dedication, their expertise, and for the enormous amount of work done to bring the new Horn syllabus and publications to life. Thank you, Ysolt Clark, Principal Consultant, Daryl Poulsen, Principal Reviewer, and the Specialist Advisory Panel, Linda Hewitt, Julia Toussaint-Jackson, and Tina Brain. Also the sight reading composer, Adrian Hallam. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our Principal Consultant, Ysolt Clark. Ysolt is an acclaimed performer and educator based in Brisbane, Australia. Born in Canberra, Ysolt studied at the Canberra School of Music and was appointed Principal Third Horn of the Queensland Symphony Orchestra at the age of 21. Since leaving the QSO, Ysolt has performed regularly as a freelance horn player and has appeared with most of the major symphony orchestras around Australia. She is also committed to chamber music performance and performs with Camerata, Queensland's chamber orchestra. Ysolt has worked with many ensembles, including Southern Cross Soloists, Elysian, and Lunaire Collective, performing in festivals throughout Australia and overseas. Ysolt is passionate about music education at all stages of development, from beginners to embarking professionals. She works with students of all ages and experience with the aim of building confident, well-rounded musicians. For the past 20 years, Ysolt has been part of the renowned horn teaching team at the Queensland Conservatorium, Griffith University, including co-directing the Q Horns Ensemble, conducting performances in Queensland, the United States, and Brazil. She teaches at several Brisbane schools and runs her own highly successful private teaching studio. Ysolt has been a brass examiner for AMEB Queensland for the past 15 years. So welcome, Ysolt. Thank you so much for being here and for your tireless work on this very exciting new release.
Hi, Steve. Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure to be part of this. It's been such an interesting and rewarding project. And I've been lucky enough to work with, alongside a lot of really fantastic horn players, some of whom you've mentioned, but lots of other horn players throughout the country and also other musicians throughout the country. So I'm looking forward to today.
It takes a village, as they say.
Absolutely.
We'd like to give everyone a bit of insight into the new Horn syllabus and publications, and there are a lot of aspects to cover, so it's a bit hard to know where to start. Let's begin with the big picture. It's an AMEB syllabus with all the usual components: technical work, repertoire, sight reading, general knowledge, and oral tests. Like most of our syllabuses, this new Horn syllabus goes all the way from preliminary, a new grade for AMEB Horn, representing the very beginning of a horn player's journey, through to licentiate, a diploma-style qualification aimed at really quite advanced players. Additionally, there are two kinds of exam that can be taken using this new syllabus: our comprehensive exam with technical work, repertoire, sight reading, oral test, and general knowledge components, and our repertoire exam, a style of exam that was rolled out in 2019 and has only repertoire requirements, although technical ability still forms a significant part of the examination criteria, of course. So what is it that has changed? Let's start with the technical work. Now, the technical work is really the beating heart of the syllabus. And once it's been sketched out right at the beginning of the review process, it's used to inform the other aspects of the syllabus. Repertoire selection, for instance, and the sight reading. Ysolt, can you give us a quick rundown of what has changed with the new horn technical work?
Sure, there's some really exciting changes. Previously, this book was always linked to the trumpet book, but now it's its own separate being, thankfully. It includes a lot of the new material that have been found in the other new brass technical books, but also some really useful horn-specific material. Firstly, the scales have more of a streamlined approach in line with the other instruments. There are fewer key centres, and also the elimination of set lists in level 2, which is great news for everyone, I'm sure. Also, the range requirement for most grades has been reduced slightly, most notably in grade 4 and grade 7. So that's also hopefully something that will be really popular, just to reduce those large ranges that have been required up until now. Where possible, we've tried to include some extra technical value into the scales. So a good example of that is that chromatic work has now been changed. Instead of separate chromatic scales on every key, it's now presented as one written exercise for each grade level, hopefully to enable the candidate to work a little bit more successfully into the edges of the range of the instrument for that level, but also providing a little bit more familiarity with the idea of a chromatic pattern as it's found within repertoire.
So that's exercise 3C, which is a chromatic exercise, rather than several chromatic scales, I guess. It's just one exercise that looks after the chromatic materials, and that fulfills several different functions.
Yeah, and it has a little place to breathe as well. So those students moving into the higher range get an extra chance to breathe as they're learning, but then also learning those little fingering patterns, which make up with how we play chromatic scales. So, and dominant and diminished seventh exercises also remain in level 2, but they've been simplified, and also, here we go, they've been expressed in a way that reflects the way they're found within repertoire. So you have a nice little dominant seventh and a simple diminished seventh. It's also an opportunity to work on transposition, because you have to learn how to transpose these in a few of the major keys that we play in. But yeah, it's built so that you become more familiar with how dominant sevenths might actually be found within repertoire. And below the dominant and diminished sevenths, we have one of the examples of double tonguing. So this is grade 6, but there's still double tonguing and triple tonguing exercises, and we've looked to express these in a way that can be related to orchestral repertoire, as horn players know the orchestral repertoire. So in this example, it's taken inspiration from William Tell. So we're sort of learning, double tonguing, but how it might be found in repertoire as it's actually played. And there are also, in the higher grades, some specific stopped and lip trill exercises that help with sort of sequential development of these skills, so that by the time you're asked to stop properly in around grade 7, those skills have already been explored a little bit. That's really good. And something else found within all of the brass new technical workbooks is the addition of lip slurs, reflecting the standard required for each grade. They're also added upon in a sequential way. So each lip slur is easier if the one from the previous grade is played well. So you can see below, this is the 3rd grade lip slur. There's an F side option, there's a B flat side option. And candidates at this level can choose to play either the F side or the B flat side option, reflecting on which side they've been playing. But every grade level has a lip slur or 2, which should be really good, and placed within the context of an exam, make it easier to play as well, provide some sort of relief. And the new layout, as you can see, it follows the newer AMEB style, and already found with most other instruments. All the all the scales for each grade are clearly notated within the grade. So there'll be no questions now which scales are actually assessed within the grade, because they're listed and printed. The whole scale is printed within the grade.
Right there on the page, no more.
Right there on the page. So it's really nice.
Big back and forth.
Yeah.
Something else we hope teachers and students will find exciting is that the orchestral excerpts for grade 5 to grade 8 are also included in the book, just like the new trumpet, trombone, and euphonium and tuba syllabuses. So you won't need to buy a separate book for orchestral excerpts. Can you tell us what has changed about the orchestral excerpts themselves?
Yeah, well, primarily having it in the same book as your technical work is really, really useful. But also, the really important thing for all of us horn players is that in keeping with the remainder of the brass instruments, we now only require 4 excerpts prepared for presentation for each exam. So it's been up to 12 in grade 8, and now it's only 4 for each grade. So in keeping with this, there is still an emphasis on transposition in these excerpts. So there'll still be a requirement that you learn to transpose a little bit, but a little bit of reduction of amount of transpositions needed to learn, especially in grade 6. It's quite a lot less. But with all of these sort of alterations, we've had to change the list a bit. There's been an effort to retain some of the favourite excerpts that have been in the previous book, but alongside of that, there's been the addition of some, really well-known and commonly played excerpts from the repertoire. And also there's been an effort to include some excerpts which are more known for low horn playing rather than high horn playing. So that would be nice for people as well.
That's great. Thanks, Ysolt. So hitting the shelves very shortly is the brand new AMEB Horn Technical Work and Orchestral Excerpts book, which will take students all the way from preliminary through to grade 8. And include the orchestral excerpts for grade 5 to grade 8. There's no separate technical work for the Certificate of Performance or Associate or Licentiate exams, of course. Very closely related to the technical work is the sight reading component of an AMEB exam. And there's a new sight reading book coming out with this release, which has been tailored to the benchmarks of the new syllabus. Essentially, this is a collection of graded sight reading examples aimed at providing students and teachers with some preparatory material, but also to give a picture of the level of sight reading expected at examination. The sight reading exercises were written by Adrian Hallam, a horn player and composer. Can you tell us a little bit about how the sight reading was put together?
Sure. We're really lucky to have experienced horn player and composer Adrian Hallam to do this work. He's really experienced in writing for the instrument, and his experience is shown from those very beginning, simple early levels to much more advanced. So he had a really good feel for what was required. At first, there was a sight reading brief created with sort of the parameters that needed to be created, with expectations of what students are capable at each grade in terms of sight reading. And then a numerous amount of exercises were written that went through, a multi-stage editing process. So they're as suitable as possible. The exciting part for me is that they all present sort of a clear musical style, but also, most importantly, are melodically strong. This supports the challenges that, frequently occur on the horn, given that pitching can be a bit more problematic. And when there's a clear melody that makes sense, it's much easier to play in that sort of situation. Also, there's a section created specifically for transposition. These exercises are written using the same musical language that we find when we're transposing in orchestral works. So it's no longer is it a case of just look back at the grade below where there might have been key signatures, and of course mostly when we transpose there aren't any key signatures. These are written in a way that reflect orchestral styles, and often are reminiscent or inspired by orchestral works as well. So they're really, really, really well crafted. So I have to thank Adrian for all his work with that.
Absolutely, thank you. And of course, putting a composer through the process of having their work reviewed multiple times and adjusted and reviewed and adjusted. We have to thank our composers, especially for putting themselves through that. But I think in the end, we've ended up with a collection of really useful exercises that will help prepare students, but also help teachers find the gaps in a student's sight reading knowledge so that they can go on and really drill any particular skills that are not developing as quickly as others.
Yeah, it's particularly, there are some, like the rhythms, for example, there are particular exercises where you can really see, well, this student isn't counting, so we might need to work more on dotted rhythms or on, rests, for example. So he's been really good with creating those sort of exercises. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So that's the sight reading. The book is called Horn, Sight Reading and Transposition, and also the technical work. But of course, what gets students excited and engaged is the repertoire. So in putting together the syllabus, a vast amount of time and thought goes into reviewing the existing manual lists, as well as finding and grading new repertoire to add to them. And there's been quite a lot in the last 15 years or so. Can you tell us a little bit about the guiding principles behind repertoire selection? What did you want to achieve with the repertoire featured in the new syllabus lists?
Sure. Well, yes, it was a lengthy process for me, and I know I already knew quite a lot about horn repertoire, but I know a whole lot more now. Yeah, in fact, I've always had a particular interest in horn repertoire and in choosing appropriate repertoire for students that's suitable, but also has a balance of building technical ability in a sort of supportive way, but also extending the musical, imagination at every standard. And I am aware that repertoire with a good melody is really important, especially for horn players, especially at the lower levels where, trying to reinforce concepts of pitch is really important for the foundation of playing. At the lower grades, there are now some more extra options that to play well-known tunes that support the younger players' development. I look to include more contrasting styles where possible, whether traditionally classical, popular works. Every grade level now has an option to play something a little bit more jazzy. Yeah, basically I looked for pedagogical value, and particularly for horn material that also introduces the high register well without creating early strain or sort of bad habits, and also level appropriate dynamics and articulations. So yeah, in short, looking for appealing, suitable music that has a strong melody and a clear musical style, as well as suiting technical ability and hopefully firing off the creative imagination.
No short order, and it's an absolutely vast task. Congratulations, Ysolt. Have there been any big changes with the repertoire component of the syllabus? Obviously, pieces removed and new pieces added, but what about the overall list structure?
Yeah, so of course the biggest change is that there are now two entirely new grades, and this has meant some small redistribution of pieces. Preliminary, which is aimed at the very early beginner, and it has a really limited range, but with some, really useful foundational skills. And then certificate, which lies after 8th grade, and I'm really proud of the repertoire that goes into certificate. There's some really rewarding options to create a really varied recital program, and I'll let Steve explain the certificate examination a little further. It's been part of the other instruments, for a few more years than horn, but yeah, Steve, you can explain it.
Thanks, Ysolt. So to go back, preliminary, many teachers who teach other instruments will know that preliminary's been around for a little while, and that's a very familiar kind of format. It has several lists. The repertoire is very approachable. The technical work all occurs within a very limited range. It's supposed to be a very gentle introduction to the idea of taking an exam and the idea of setting goals at the end of the year. The certificate of performance, however, serves a couple of purposes. Certificate is positioned between grade 8 and AMUS, and for those going on to AMUS or LMUS, it really represents something of a bridging level and an introduction to the recital style of those examinations. Partly it was created in response to feedback from teachers that for some students going straight from grade 8 through to AMUS was a bit of a jump, certainly in terms of musical maturity, in terms of stamina, and possibly in terms of just coming to terms with a recital style examination rather than 3 pieces, 4 pieces and technical work, etc., etc. So it functions as a bridging level, but also functions as a capping level for level 2. So it's a recital examination to aim for, possibly for those who don't intend to go on to AMUS and LMUS. It's a bit of a goal point for those who might not go on further than that. It still has 2 lists, and Ysolt might be able to tell more about that.
Has three lists. Certificate has 3 lists, which I can explain briefly. The first, list A, is unaccompanied from any time era. List B is accompanied pre-1900, and list C is accompanied post-1900. So out of that, there's the possibility to create some really interesting, mixes of repertoire. And it is important to consider that the certificate and AMUS A and LMUS exams are all based, when creating the recital program, they're based on time length rather than number of pieces. So it's really, I think with Horn, that's slipped through the gaps somewhat in the last 15 years, but it really is, it's the length of time. So a recital that goes for between 25 and 40 minutes, it's all written down, but then a balanced recital program. And so there is actually the option to prepare 3 or 4 works depending on the repertoire you've chosen, because of course with Horn, some of our repertoire in the higher levels in AMUS, it's quite long, and so to ask students to prepare 4 pieces doesn't always work in terms of the length of time. So here we have an opportunity to, as long as it's a varied program, to have 3 pieces rather than 4, or 4 pieces as desired. Yeah.
A little bit more flexibility for students to develop their interest. The unaccompanied piece could be, of a variety of different styles, which means that students who might be undertaking other activities, such as Year 12 exams, hopefully it will complement those kinds of other activities really well.
Yeah, definitely. When I was looking at certificate and potential repertoire for certificate, I was looking at different Year 12 courses throughout Australia, and it would match in really well. There's a lot of repertoire on certificate that would work within a Year 12 performance. And then moving with the structure, with the rest of the manual list, there's also been a bit of an effort, also with the technical work, to bring 4th grade and 5th grade slightly closer together. 4th grade itself has a slightly reduced range because most teachers had sort of noted that sometimes moving up to a G was a bit of a push for students at 4th grade. But so for the 4th grade, slightly reduced range, but musically there's some more sophisticated options. So musically you're being better prepared to move into level 2. And 5th grade as a whole has been slightly simplified, especially in the manual list. So just some of the pieces are slightly easier or less lengthy. It's a really good way of describing it. Excuse me. I've always been interested in and engaged in new repertoire written for the horn, and there's certainly been a lot of great quality music written in the last 20 years. I'm really happy that some new repertoire, quite a lot of new repertoire has been included, especially works by Australian and female composers. But all the favourite works frequently played in exams have been retained. There's a couple with some little shifts of level that hopefully will work really well for everyone. But part of the review consisted looking at the pieces commonly played in exams and making sure that they were kept, as well as investigating some of those pieces that were out of print and really hard to find, and whether they were actually being played in exams at all, and in which case some of them have been removed from the list. Yeah.
Just exactly what we're hoping to aim with a syllabus review, is to prune out any of the material that isn't being used, and reinvigorates the lists with new material. So a mix of old favourites and some wonderful new additions that we hope will be really inspiring. Is there anything in particular you're excited about seeing on the manual lists for the first time?
Well, I mean, in general, I'm known as being a big fan of the value of performing unaccompanied works. I really like unaccompanied works. So there's many more pieces, especially in the higher levels, of like good music written for unaccompanied horn, found primarily in List A. So there's lots of new options in this regard. I also really like studies, but with stylistic as well as technical outcomes. So I'm really happy that there are some options to play some cling studies, as well as this fantastic newish book of characteristic etudes by Brazilian composer Fernando Moraes. It's really valuable, but also musically really stylish and enjoyable to play. In the higher grades, there's numerous great pieces moving in. A standout for me would be the Dawn interlude by Australian composer Paul Stanhope. It's already on heaps of Year 12 lists. It's commonly played. It's really good that it can now be used in your AMEB exam as well. And also the sonatas by Jane Vignery and York Bowen. These are great pieces that I think are beginning to be played more, and now that they're in this exam list, I think will be used a little bit more frequently. In the earlier grades, I personally like some of the works by Philip Spark. He's got a really good way of providing technically appropriate material, but with a clear musical character that sometimes isn't so obviously found in early tutor methods. So they're just little short pieces that have, something behind them rather than just notes and rhythm. So I really like them. But of course, I'm really excited by all of the new repertoire, some of it's old repertoire, but some of the repertoire moving into the new Series 2 books.
And let's talk about the Series 2 grade books now. We hope that's what everybody's really excited about. The new syllabus includes all of the previous series of AMEB grade books. There have been no series withdrawn, but the Series 2 grade books will join those as an additional resource for the new syllabus. The grade books are, of course, an enormous part of a syllabus review. The content is painstakingly selected and lovingly edited by our team, a process which takes many hundreds of hours from a number of contributors, including Ysolt herself, of course, the reviewers, the typesetter, editors, proofreaders, and proof players. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank David Howell in particular, who really ran the syllabus development process for Horn.
He ran me as well.
And took the lead in the editing process as well. So thank you very much, David Howell, who is also a horn player, as well as a wonderful typesetter and member of our AMEB publications team. So
and a great arranger too. The arrangements he's created are really fantastic. I can't say thank you enough to David. He's just, he's an awesome person, and he's helped so much with all of this. So yes, thank you, David.
We're very grateful. David Howell, that is. So tell us a little bit about how works were selected for the grade books. What sort of things were you looking for in the pieces? I definitely had my little wish list of something that I wanted to achieve in every grade level. So looking firstly for varied musical material that's appealing to a wide range of students, not just young students, but often with horn we have students who started at slightly later and more musically experienced age. So there's sort of a nice balance even in the earlier levels of more musically simple and a bit more something to get your teeth into, I guess. And hopefully in the new repertoire, opening up the students to the many possibilities that come within playing the horn. The repertoire had to show that by playing and practicing thoughtfully, not only would it develop technical skills, but also further musical expression and understanding, and trying to present this in a really appealing package that also has elements that are easily assessed. So I always had to think about the exam situation itself.
Within the grade books, there was a lot of careful thought and editing, as Steve's mentioned, to make the works really suitable for each grade. Things like rests were added if needed, so there's extra opportunity for breathing at the lower grades. Key was really considered. When we play in the right key on the horn, it can help build a nicer sound quality, which is, of course, a really primary goal to consider the sound when playing the horn. So we've thought about key in that way, just so that you're more likely to produce a beautiful tonal quality. And of course, horn players tend to be a clever bunch, so there needed to be repertoire that had opportunity for some musical sophistication. A lot of attention was given into moving and introducing the high range without strain. So a lot of phrases moving into the high range rather than suddenly playing high notes out of nowhere, which is always a bit of a challenge. There's a variety of level appropriate time signatures and keys, as well as thought about articulation and dynamics. In terms of styles, so these are sort of my wish list of styles that went into each grade level. There are jazzy up-tempo offerings. There are opportunities to be bold and heroic, like a classic sort of horn playing style. A lot of works in a more of a vocal cantabile lyrical style, as this is an aspect of playing the horn that both helps development of sound but also develops sense of phrase, so lots of nice slurred works. Every grade has something in more of a classical style and also in a traditional sort of hunting horn style, looking at the background of where the horn comes from. And we've also taken melodies from non-Western sources throughout the world. We've taken melodies from well-known classical works. Female composers such as Emma Gregan and Barbara Aarons have been included. And as well as Emma, there are several other Australian composers featured, including several works that have been specifically created for these books. Also, just wanted to remember, there have been some works that have been presented as duos. Within most of the grade levels, there are some duos printed. Now, these are for practice purposes only. So a lot of horn players some teach with piano, but some teach just with the horn in their hand. So this way, especially for list A, the student can play one part, the teacher can play another part, and help really reinforce that sort of stable sense of rhythm and pulse that's so important. But yeah, and just nice to play duets. Also, confidence in pitching comes from playing duets as well. So yeah, so just to reiterate, these duos you still play on your own in the exam, but there's an opportunity to practice with a duo second part with the teacher.
Absolutely. This is something very exciting. It has occurred in some other instruments gradebooks. So in violin, we've had a lot of success with duo parts in the past, and it just offers new opportunities in the teaching room, especially for teachers who might not be brilliant pianists or might be teaching somewhere where there isn't a piano. So it just gives an opportunity to have an ensemble experience, even if a piano is not involved. Now, to support Series 2, there will be a set of recorded accompaniments, which go from preliminary through to grade 3. These recorded accompaniments can be used both for practice and in examination. Beyond grade 3, an accompanist is required for AMEB examinations, and so we don't produce AMEB recorded accompaniments beyond that level. We'd like to give everyone a little bit of a sneak peek of the contents of this new series. And so we have a few performances of some of the works in the books. Ysolt will introduce each work for you and tell you a little bit about why it was selected, as well as the performers who are performing for you today.
Yeah, fantastic. So from the preliminary book, from the preliminary Series 2 book, we have a piece called Secret Mission. It's by Brisbane composer Kerry Thomas. This piece is an opportunity to develop concepts of dynamics whilst solidifying that sort of foundation of a really, good sense of pitch at this early point. It's also really musically engaging as well. It's fantastic. And performing this today, we've got 10-year-old horn player, Aaron Shu, who does an awesome job with it, and with piano accompanist Judy Lin. Straight away, we'll move on to grade 1. I've actually chosen a list A piece to play from the new grade 1 book, again with Aaron playing. Thanks so much, Aaron. He's got so much character when he plays, it's awesome. But yeah, so as this list A piece from the grade 1 book, it's an opportunity to play with a really secure sense of rhythm and pulse, as well as reinforcing simpler intervals and some syncopation. This is a traditional Brazilian song called Sambalele. Thanks so much to Aaron for that. Yeah, he's such a trooper doing those performances for us. And moving on to a piece from List B in the 2nd grade book. This piece is the DUSSEK Lesson 18. DUSSEK was a classical Czech composer. It's written in a really comfortable range for the horn player at this level, but includes a little bit more interval work, as well as detailed articulation in more of a classical style, and has a really sort of catchy earworm type of tune, which is helpful. And to play this today, we have Chelsea Chiang on horn and Judy Lin again on piano. Thanks so much to Chelsea for recording that for us. From the grade 3 book, we have a List C piece called Ocean Blue by Australian composer and horn player Emma Gregan. Technically, this explores aspects of playing in 6/8 whilst retaining an even sound quality, especially when slurred and sort of moving through an expressive sort of dynamic change and flow. It's a really evocative piece, and it uses a little bit more of a modern musical language. And today we're lucky enough to have a recording of the composer Emma, who's a fantastic horn player in the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra, and she's playing this today with Sam Peng. such beautiful playing from Emma. I'm sure you'd agree, you could almost listen to that all day. It's such beautiful music, but really well played as well. So thank you, Emma, for doing that. And of course, I felt like I couldn't be left out. I had to play a piece as well. So I've chosen a piece from grade 4. It's a List C piece from the new grade 4 book titled The Swashbuckler. This is by Australian composer Lachlan Davidson. This piece has it all, okay? It's 12/8, it's got varied key signatures, it's got a bold character juxtaposed with smoother, sweeter, slurred lines. I have to add, it's extremely popular. So anytime I've shown it to a student, they've grabbed it and ran and done more practice with it. So it's just something about it just captures the imagination. It's a great mix of some, really grade level appropriate technical and music literacy sort of challenges, but it's made much easier and approachable by the musical character and line. So yeah, Lachlan's done an awesome job with writing this piece. It really sums up the books for me, hopefully trying to be musically interesting, but in a way that also develops and supports technical development. So this is The Swashbuckler.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much to our performers, Aaron Shu, Chelsea Chiang, Judy Lin, Emma Gregan, Sam Peng, and Ysolt, of course. What a privilege it is to hear those pieces performed at such a high level, especially for those of us who have been working on them for a year on the page. It's always very exciting to hear them finally breathed into life. Before we go, I said we'd answer a few questions that have been sent through via the chat function. There has only really been one question sent through, and that was, are the excerpts and the orchestral excerpts and technical work combined in one book? Yes, absolutely. So that will be the AMEB Horn technical work and orchestral excerpts book, all in one place. And I think that was it for questions. Look, that concludes our AMEB Horn syllabus and publications launch. The syllabus is available now online and via your local music retailers. And the new Horn Series 2 publications can be pre-ordered now, available in January at your local music shop via ameb.edu.au and via other online sheet music retailers. Thank you so much, Ysolt Clark, the Principal Consultant for the Horn Syllabus Project, and the other consultants and contributors to the syllabus and books, reviewer Daryl Poulsen, specialist advisory panels Linda Hewitt, Julia Toussaint-Jackson and Tina Brain, sight reading composer Adrian Hallam, project officer David Howell, as well as our typesetting and proofreading team and the many Australian and international composers whose works make the gradebooks so very good. Thanks also to the behind the scenes AMEB team, especially Bernard De Pasquale, AMEB CEO, and Alana Caldwell for making this online launch possible. And to our wonderful performers today, again, thanks Aaron Shu, Chelsea Chiang, Judy Lin, Emma Gregan, Sam Peng, and Ysolt.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say thanks so much for having me along today, Steve, and to speak about everything that's been going on for the last year.
Oh, our pleasure, our pleasure. And last but certainly not least, thank you to all of you attending online live for the live stream now and who will be listening later on, we hope. We hope that this new Horn syllabus and all of the publications serve the Horn community as a useful and inspiring resource for many years to come. Thank you again and goodbye.
Bye.